Good morning. I was thinking about I got to tell you, it's hard sometimes when you've got some thoughts in your head that you want to get out, and then you have Drew lead singing. It completely derails me. I just want to keep singing with him. If you have not, make sure that you tell our song leaders, who are such an important piece of our worship, make sure you tell them thank you for their efforts and talents to lead our minds and our hearts in worshiping God. Sometimes I think they get overlooked, but thank you. From John 19. Now in the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had yet been laid. Therefore, because of the Jewish day of preparation, since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. That's a kind of a strange passage to our ears, is it not? A grave where no one had laid. But that's part of the challenge of the gospel, and especially of the events around the cross itself, is that they are so foreign to our existence that we have to put forth great efforts to be able to put ourselves in the midst of the story. Here is another piece that, unless we're paying attention, we miss. You see, burial and grave traditions around the world vary widely. It's actually a topic that I know a good bit about because I was kind of raised, if you would, in a funeral home. And I was driving a flower truck for the funerals at 16 and driving the hearse at 18. Ask Janelle sometime about us riding together in the hearse to take my grandmother down to be buried in St. Cloud, Florida, and stopping at Burger King. It just really does offend her to this day. But their traditions were very different than ours. Their tradition was to lay out a body for a period of time, months, and let the natural decomposition process to a large extent run its course, to deflesh the body. Then the bones would be collected up and then permanently interred, sometimes in a reliquary, a box that had the bones in it, or some other location. And if you think about it, that fits the story. This tomb that has been carved out of rock so that the body would have shelves or a shelf to allow it to sit there for an extended period of time and decompose. But it is sealed to keep out any animals or anything that might disturb it. Big, huge stone sealing the entrance. If you think about the story of Joseph, remember that Joseph made a request at the end of his life. Don't leave my bones here in Egypt. When you leave this place, take my bones with you. 430 years later, they would. So you get some idea. Now the linen wrappings, because guess what? The bones, things can happen, and they can get misplaced. They can get knocked or jostled or mixed up. So they wrapped the body in linen wrappings so that the bones would stay together. And then the idea of the face napkin may have been the idea of the first thing that gets lost or detached, because it's only connected really on one side, is the jaw, around the face. And they had seen Jesus, and they had put him in this new tomb where there was no confusion and no chance of anybody mistaking his body for anyone else. He was laid there, the tomb sealed, the guard set, and they left. And the title of this talk was A New Tomb. And that's what it physically meant. But there's more to it than that. Because it was new in a completely different way. Because on the first day of the week, that morning, and in my mind, I have this, it says Mary went there when it was still dark. I have this image in my mind of a kind of a foggy morning, going through the mist to get there. Except the tomb is open. The stone has been rolled away. And the women and Mary and everybody, there's this commotion as they go to the disciples and say, the tomb's open and the body's gone. And Peter and John run. And they go into the tomb. And they see those linen wrappings that were meant to keep the bones together are just, they're in place. But no body. They recognize this wrapping that was around the face, lying separately, not hurriedly thrown aside, but just set aside. And then the angels speak. Why are you here? Why do you seek the living where the dead normally stay? He is risen. And that makes this tomb different. This makes it a new kind of tomb, a tomb that is temporary. No longer is death the end of the story. But as Peter and John look over that place where the body was, what they're seeing ultimately is their own future. They will die. They will be interred. That's the technical name if you didn't know that. They will be interred, but they won't stay there. And the same is for us, because it is a new kind of tomb because of what Jesus has done. This is not the end of the story. This is not the end of the journey. His death has made that possible. That we will not stay in that grave. As believers, as confident in the truth and the power and the holiness of our Savior that gave his life so that he could show us the way. And when he says, show us the way, that includes the way the story will truly end with life. And so it is a new kind of tomb. Just put up a sign and say, only here for a little while because of Jesus. He has said, not going to stay, but I'm going to go home to him. Now that's hard for us sometimes to get our brain in our modern context, in our modern thinking, kind of get it in that mode. But I want you to think of the wonder of Peter and John, and later the women, when they see. He's not there. He's gone. He is alive. And he is our King. So as we celebrate the meaning of his death, burial, and resurrection, let's remember those things.